They were called prostitutes. Most of them weren't. They were waitresses, factory girls, wives whose husbands turned them in, teenagers seen talking to the wrong man. For more than half a century, the United States government ran a program that let officials arrest any woman they suspected of being immoral, lock her inside a hospital ward, and force painful treatments into her body. No charge, no trial, no way out. It started with a war and a fear of disease. It ended, in some places, within living memory. This is the American plan. To understand it, go back to 1917. The United States has just entered the First World War. Millions of young men are pouring into training camps before shipping to Europe. And the military has a problem. It isn't bullets, it's infection. Sexually transmitted disease is spreading through the camps faster than any weapon. At the time, there is no penicillin, no cure. A soldier too sick to march is a soldier lost before he ever reaches France. So the government asks a question that will ruin tens of thousands of lives. Where is the disease coming from? And they decide on an answer. Women, not the soldiers, the women around them. The War Department declares that any woman near a military camp could be a carrier. They give her a name, the charity girl, the good time girl, the promiscuous woman, and they build a machine to find her. In 1918, Congress passes the Chamberlain-Cahn Act. It funds a new government body with a bland name, the Interdepartmental Social Hygiene Board. On paper, it fights disease. In practice, it gives officials the power to detain women. Here is how it worked. A woman could be stopped for almost anything. Walking alone at night, living in a boarding house, being seen with a soldier, wearing too much makeup. An officer only needed to reasonably suspect that she might be infected. Suspicion was enough. She was taken to be examined against her will. If a doctor decided she was diseased, and the tests of the day were crude and often wrong, she was declared a public health threat. Then she was locked up, not in a jail, in a detention hospital or a reformatory or a so-called farm colony. She was not sentenced by a judge. She was committed by a health officer. And because it was called medicine, not punishment, none of the protections of a criminal trial applied. No lawyer, no jury, no appeal. The average stay was around 10 weeks. Some women were held for years. One of those women had a name we know because she fought back. Her name was Nina McCall. In 1918, she was 18 years old, living in the small town of St. Louis, Michigan. One day, a deputy stopped her on the street and told her to report for an examination. She had done nothing. There was no complaint. But she went because a government official told her to. A doctor examined her and declared she was infected. Nina was ordered into the Bay City Detention Hospital. There, she was given the standard treatment of the era, injections of mercury and doses of arsenic. These were the only drugs that did anything to syphilis before penicillin, and they were poisons. They made patients sick. They damaged the body. Nina was made to take them whether she was truly infected or not. She was held for weeks. When she was finally released, she was still being ordered to report for more injections. And Nina McCall did something almost no one in her position did. She sued. In 1919, she took the state of Michigan to court, accusing the officials of imprisoning and poisoning her without cause. Her case put the American plan on trial. And still, the machine kept running because Nina was not alone. Across the country, the same thing was happening to tens of thousands of women. Inside the detention hospitals, the routine was grim. Women were subjected to invasive examinations on arrival. They were dosed with the same toxic metals. Many were put to work, scrubbing, laundering, sewing, unpaid, to cover the cost of their own confinement. If a woman resisted, she could be punished. Some institutions used isolation cells. Records describe women being restrained. In certain states, officials went further, and some detained women were sterilized under laws written in the same era. The women who went through it were overwhelmingly poor. Many were black, or immigrant, or simply alone in a city with no one to vouch for them. A woman with money and a respectable husband was rarely suspected. A working girl with no protector was the perfect target. The plan did not go looking for the powerful. It went looking for the powerless. You might assume this ended when the war ended. It did not. The First World War was the excuse, but the machinery outlived it. Through the 1920s, the 1930s, the Second World War, and beyond, versions of the American plan stayed on the books in state after state. During World War II, the crackdown surged again, and more women were detained near the new wave of military bases. Historians estimate that over the life of the program, tens of thousands, likely hundreds of thousands, of American women were examined, detained, or held under its laws. And here is the part that should stop you. Notice what the American plan actually punished. If it were really about disease, the soldiers, who were at least as likely to be infected, would have been detained too. They almost never were. What it punished was a woman being out in the world without a man's permission, independent. The disease was the reason on the form. The real charge was freedom, and the cure, as always, was a locked door. We tell this story as if it belongs to the past, as if it could only happen in a world of horse-drawn wagons and ice picks and men in high collars. But the women who lived it were somebody's grandmother, somebody's aunt. Their names were erased from the records on purpose, because a society that does this to its daughters prefers not to remember. Nina McCall wanted us to remember. She stood up, alone, and said out loud that it happened. The least we can do is not look away, because the door was never really about the disease. It was about who gets to decide what a woman does with her own life. And that question never closed.